Hello, everyone who is surviving with me in this heat. We're all boiling in the physical world. And there might be something else. Well, if you can keep the fans on you, because this is a bit like Ready Player One. We're going to go to another dimension here. All architects ourselves. But let's talk about architecture in the metaverse and continuing on with that theme. What better way to do it than to actually speak to architects who practice in the metaverse? So I am here, joined live today on this virtual air-conditioned stage with the fantastic two architects from Decent Architecture. We've got Michel to my virtual, I think it's right, isn't it? So there we go. So we got Michel on the stage. So I'm going to do a little round of applause. And beneath, we've got Leonardo. So welcome to the stage, both of you. Maybe first of all, because I know they say freeze a crowd and we'll go around together, but perhaps I can start off this way, actually. Michel, maybe you could tell us briefly about yourself, why you're interested in the metaverse, and maybe then that will give us a clue to what Decent Architecture is.
I mean, in my case, what all the metaverse brought to me was just thinking like, okay, I can be creative on this world. I was already doing some research, regarding the Web3, blockchain, NFT projects that I was following. And suddenly, once I started to see that how creative you can get on the metaverse, how much all your ideas that you couldn't apply on the brick and mortar architecture, suddenly you can actually see that taking shape, And I mean, this is actually an hobby more than work. And this is the reason why I came to the metaverse. I mean, it's so free. You feel the freedom. You are limited a bit with a few things we'll talk after, but I mean, this is just unleashing all the ideas that were stuck in here since uni, And suddenly here they are, and I actually can feel them and I can walk on them.
I love it. Exactly. Why should those projects just stay on a hard drive after all they work? I felt the same in academia, whereas the metaverse, it really opens up the opportunities. So Leonardo, thank you as well for being here. Maybe you can tell us briefly about yourself and why you're also so excited about the metaverse.
Yeah. No, so first of all, thank you, Stephen, for this conversation. It's nice to talk to you. Actually, and it's super fun. The music that you put it in the intro was amazing, actually. So, I just felt it. Metaverse, good question. Let's say that, look, I finished university in 2014, so like 8 years ago. And 8 years? Well, yes, 8 years. And then
it feels like a long time, man.
8 years ago.
No, I actually feels more. But anyway, no, but so. And what happens in these 8 years is that, 90% of the designs that I worked on with my hand, for the people that I worked for in these years, they never got built. 90% of them. And I was wondering, who paid my salaries? Why? If the buildings were not built, and all of that work, where is it? Does it exist? Does it not? And I think the metaverse is an opportunity for all of that work to exist in a way. And so we're not doing it. We're not taking work that we did before and deploying in the metaverse. But that could be a way. And also for university guys, I mean, if I was at university at the moment, I will definitely bump into the metaverse. First of all, for the fun. But then it can be a source of income. It's not a bad. It's not even we're not talking about. And also lifestyle and conditions of work. You can work on your own easily. And so all of these things. Sorry, go.
No. You're right. It is completely changing the rules. You always reminded me. I remember working on an architecture project when I was in practice, and I'd always think about the 3D models, and I used to think it'd be really cool to put zombies in this. And I always wondered, what buildings that I work on would last the longest in a different reality. But in the metaverse, I mean, it really does blur all the lines, isn't it? You've got existing projects in real life, you've got the metaverse and how they cross over. But it's quite important to mention then, so you're both trained as architects, right? So architectural professionals, is that accurate?
Yeah.
Yeah, both of
Cool.
us, as in Leo finished in 2014, and I finished in 2012. Yeah,
Well,
2012.
well done there. We give a round of applause because architecture is quite a long course, but it is interesting what the role of an architect will be in the metaverse as well, because we spend this long to qualify in the physical world and it takes a long time, but in the metaverse, in some sense, anyone can be an architect, right? But at the same time, the stuff that architects learn, and this may be something you guys can unpack for me as well, is also super, super valuable. Maybe what we can do with as well is bring it around. So you kindly messaged me out of the blue because I've been doing some stuff on the metaverse. I'm really keen in all this space, and I started looking into what you're doing now of decent architecture. So maybe one of you guys, so you pick between whoever wants to do the talking in this hot weather. There you go. Michel's you've been volunteered, Michel. Maybe you can tell us all about why you felt like setting up decent architecture, and maybe what you're going to do, maybe a little bit about it. I know you've got a presentation as well. Maybe you want to talk about it at the start, or you want to jump into a little bit about it. I'm completely flexible to what you'd like to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can just start with the PDF that we
just jump straight in. All right. So let me bring up this here now.
Oh wow.
Oh, there you go. So I'll be quiet. I'll strap in, and I'd love to hear all about it.
But see, stop Michel if he talks too much, because
I'm the chatty one. Don't worry, you're in good company. You go for it. You know.
Exactly. I mean, I do tend to talk a lot, but that's not the problem, I guess. I mean, so me and Leo, we always talked a lot about both of us were living in London. I'm still living in London, but Leo went back to Portugal, and we always talked a lot about one day doing a project of our own, like a little house or something. But you do know how hard this is actually in brick and mortar architecture and getting a house commissioned to us. And suddenly Leo is in Portugal and I'm in London currently. So with this in mind, is we were always talking on WhatsApp because we are great friends. And eventually when I started to see this NFT thing going on, and I started to see that Leo was interested in starting his own projects on the side, we started to talk a lot about that. And that's when it came to us. Well, it's not going to be a brick and mortar house, like architecture in this case, but we can actually do this on the metaverse. We can join forces and work on this. And that's when it all started. Like both of us, we were on the same page, had more or less the same flexibility in time. In this case, it's mostly like working, like we were working like on this during the evenings and weekends. I have a 2-year-old son, so instead of since I can't go to Shoreditch or any other bars anymore, what I do is
you go to the metaverse with the baby in the hand, right?
Exactly. I mean, it is asleep at 7 p.m., but then I do have my time to sit on the computer, talk with Leo, we sketch things over, we send it over. Sometimes it's even on my commute, I'm sketching something, sending to him. It's like, nah, this is never going to work. So this collaboration is really possible to do without any borders. We don't need to be next to each other, because everything is digitally. And so that's when we started, and this started to gain the traction. We started to, maybe we just need to come up with the name, with decent architecture. Like the name actually came out of kind of like poking a bit on the scar, because we were just thinking like, you do have a lot of decentralized this, decentralized that. Maybe we just remove part of the name and became decent as a way to poke around. And as well, because we walk around on the metaverse, and just like you said, you don't need to be an architect. Lots of people say they are architects, and in reality, they are not. They are composing 3Ds. They don't have this academic background. But with this, I'm not actually saying it's a bad thing. I mean, you do have Barracan, a Mexican architect that he was never an architect, and he won the Pritzker, and is actually was a great architect.
Yeah.
So
I didn't know that.
yeah, Barracan wasn't an architect. Sorry, apologies on this, but he wasn't an architect, actually. He got the title just by his experience. So having said that, we still kept the name. We kept the name with the decent, And this is the workflow that we work between us. Everything is digitally. And this is one of the great things about working on this kind of architectural practice, if you can call, And pretty much we've been on this journey, I would say, like since December, that we created the logo, we created the buildings, we started to create buildings in a way to understand the limitations, understand how our work needs to be adapted from the traditional thinking of architecture to traditional consultants that we have as architects, MEPs, structural engineers, fire engineers. We don't have them anymore, sadly. But there's other consultants that we need to rely, just like, as an example, developers. You do have developers, but it's not property developers like we used to say on brick and mortar architecture. It's coding, and we need to rely on them. So all of this has been like a lot of learning, education on ourselves. It's almost a separate degree on understanding what value can we bring to this new world, and what else we still need to learn, And I mean, it's been now around 7 months and a half, around that, 8 months potentially, that we've been doing this. And I think, Leo, you can flip a bit through the PDF and showcase a bit of the current state that we have.
Perfect. Very interesting,
frozen, right?
Isn't it?
Is my camera frozen or something?
Your presentation's working, and you might be frozen, but you are here. Don't worry.
Good.
You look deep in concentration.
Should I speak, or is Michel?
I'm happy for you to speak. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So this is, as Michel was saying, this is architecture is a funny name as well, and it makes sense in the decentralized world. And also we don't want to have a headquarter, and so this physical decentralized for us was kind of cool. And also the dream is to be able to work from the beach in the Maldives one day. So it's also part of the dream and the ambition. So, but apart from this, is the ambition is that when we were working around in the Centerland, we were realizing that there is a lot of chaos in terms of lights, in terms of colors, in terms of shapes, and it's okay. It doesn't matter. But I think we, in a way, wanted to create a little bit of some quiet experience. Okay. And I'm sure this comes from our background as like architects in the real world. So this was our first approach on, for example, Decentraland. And so we began with selecting the materials. For example, we choose 2 materials, concrete and bronze, and we work just with those 2 textures because. Well, at the moment, this is our way at the moment. And let's see. Then we are on social media, whatever. Okay. So what we do actually, so you don't just design buildings for the people. This is one part of the business. What kind of accent did I just have? Anyway, so this is one part of the business, okay? So architects in real life design building for others, but in the metaverse you could do way more stuff. Like you can teach, like consulting. You can sell your expertise to other architects that want to come in the field, and then obviously you do your custom design buildings for like NFT galleries, or like we did an arena, I'm going to show you later. And then what you do, you can also create your own buildings and mint them in, like, for example, you can use Renovi platform or your own OpenSea platform as well. So you can sell ready-made buildings. Okay, you can. And another thing is virtual estates. It's becoming a thing recently. You have real estate people that want to provide with a virtual asset. Okay, and so what they need is they need to be able to mint the virtual building, and so we can remodel the existing buildings, and this is a big opportunity for everybody. And then NFT collections, for example, we did an NFT collection for the Costco Foundation. We're going to talk later. And then design competition, we participate in design competitions because it's something that is really exciting for us to explore, like a research, aesthetically, artistic research.
Nice.
Yeah. The next slide is Michel, maybe, I don't know.
Like CRNFT Arena. So this was actually quite an exciting project that we had, like a collaboration with a platform that they are art curators. And the thing was they approached us for us to become one of their main architects, actually to produce the spaces on the different metaverses that they were interested or that we could suggest. So in the beginning, it was more of a consulting type of work. And then we decided, okay, let's join together our forces. This is such a nice cause because they had quite great quality on the artists that they are curating. And this was the idea that we came with this project. I mean, as you can see, as Leo was saying, like we started with this collection of buildings and thoughts a bit to simplify the materials, a bit as well, thinking that the metaverses, they have limitations in terms of the shapes, the size of the file, polygons. So we tried to, with simple shapes, actually generate space. And space, bearing a bit on mind, what Leo said was, you walk in the metaverse, and what a lot of people are currently trying to do is having it's a lot of different colors, shapes, neon lights. I mean, it's so funky that sometimes you even got lost on where is the space that created it, and where are the ends, where is the entrance, what's exactly trying to sell or as an experience or it doesn't communicate very well. So that's one of our main aims in terms of our design lines, is simple structures that generate space with simple lines and actually can be deployable on the main metaverses. On this case, we did this bearing in mind Spatial.io, and it was the thought of like Leo came back from Egypt talking a lot about pyramids and just imagining always like talking about all the pharaohs' names that I can barely remember. But there's an attraction to this shape, It is true because the names are not easy, but there's an attraction to this shape. And I mean, in this case, it was thinking like, wait a minute. I mean, we need to do a space for CRNFT to be able to do auctions, live auctions of NFTs. And at the same time, to host those NFTs on exhibition. So the thought was like, with the pyramid, we could invert the pyramid, and that generates the space. The shape of the pyramid itself has potential for a stage, as you can see it. And by being inverted, you have this amazing cantilever structure that defines the space below as the exhibition space, the foyer, and then you have the transition between the stage and the exhibition area. And this is actually a project that gave us a lot of pleasure just to see it deployed on Spatial.io. Because again, such simple lines results on a model that is not very heavy, can work in with the current metaverses conditions, and it responds to the brief, which is the most important thing, responds to the brief that we received from the client. He said it what he wanted, and actually he became a friend with us, to be honest. Started as a client and nowadays is a friend, very happy with the results, which even lead us to other projects that we will show more like on the next slides.
Nice.
You can talk about the next one, Leo. Carry on.
pass the buck on. See, you gotta spread the projects out.
Yeah.
I mean, they're very cool. They remind me of this imagination. What I like is, maybe I've been watching Dune and Blade Runner a lot, but I quite like these, different worlds. I think it's quite inspirational. Did you get any inspiration when you both were thinking about this stuff? Is it not just from architecture? Is it also from, well, I guess it can be different worlds, right, in the metaverse, truly.
Stephen, is exactly, you say the magic words, Blade Runner and Dune. You said exactly what we were inspired by. So, yeah.
Good. They're good inspirations and good films. Like, I'll show you a quick story once on recruitment. Is there was a director who was interviewing a part 2, and I think the director asked, "What's your favorite film?" And the part 2 said Blade Runner, and he said, "You're hired." So there's something for it. Yeah, I mean, Blade Runner is such a cool film, but that was so ahead of its time, actually, wasn't it?
No, and to be honest, the latest Blade Runner I actually watched on the cinema with Leo here in London when it was launched. Both of us we went there, and we just came out like, have you seen all those cities, the buildings, the scenario? I mean, it was amazing, and just like, I like the fact that you actually talked on Blade Runner, and this was one of the first things we talked when we started this project together, was like, we can do Blade Runner. I even remembered of Inception, for example, not by the architecture, but that power of suddenly creating a building out of nowhere, folding the city. This is actually more or less what we're doing, and it's fantastic.
I wouldn't live in Blade Runner anyway. Just
but it's a dangerous world, but it looks pretty, right? But that's the fun.
But it's Los Angeles. But actually, Blade Runner is Los Angeles in 20 something.
I didn't know. I didn't know.
But decent stage. This is actually a building that Michel worked more than I did. It came from him more than from me. So I don't know, Michel, you wanna?
No, okay, yeah. I mean, this one was for actually a competition for Renovi. So Renovi is a marketplace, and they promoted the competition maybe 3 months ago or so, where it was for a Metaverse architects from the Metaverse competition. And I mean, I had always this thought that in the Metaverse, what we should do, like there's shapes that promote the gathering by the shape itself. So one of the ideas was having kind of a spherical shape. It was always on the back of my mind to have a spherical shape, and then at the center you would have actually the stage itself.
There you go.
The thought in here was more to, okay, we're not going to parametrical architecture or anything with curves. It's more about having the stage that is spherical. And then the rest of the space is actually composed by all like a rectilinear building, just a cube in the middle of the space, The result was actually something, again, with the concrete and the bronze, trying to create a bit of this quietness, this sober space, where you actually enter from the foyer and suddenly you see from the outside, or the image that Leo is showing, all the exhibition center, and you have this monumental scale that amazes you. You look around, you see all this sphere and the light passing through as well, just to create a bit more of like a drama effect. And then you do have the staircases that lead you to a bridge where you connect it and you are enlightened by the actual talk, debate, or whatever is being promoted there. And I mean, it was a great project. Even we did this for the central end, which is quite limited in terms of what you can do there, in terms of sizes, in terms of you cannot go with a lot of curves because of polygon numbers. A curve in reality, I mean, the better you want the curve to be, I
gotta be honest. When I went on to Centraland before, that was the first thing I noticed, because I'm a bit of in my spare time, when I have a bit of time, I play video games, and I understand it's running through a browser and all this stuff, but you can tell it was made during a certain period of time, and as you see, I can see the limitations being pushed, and I've heard from one or two other people, because there's different places where you can do the metaverse, right? And that's where you're talking about the limits of Decentraland, but my understanding as well is Sandbox is very cool, but maybe it's got a different feel to it, and they've got different limitations, right? When you have all these different ones, and Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, evil. Sorry. Oh. No, I can't say that. I'm live streaming on Facebook as well. But you got all these different interpretations, right? And I always wonder which one's going to take off. But there are different parameters, and I suppose you've got to do that. And maybe you can answer that question in 1 sec. Just before we do that, though, because I wanted to say that we've got a few comments that have come in from fellow architect and Flora saying, so loving this chat.
Sure.
Zen Modern Life, thank you for adding that. And Zen says that the metaverse interests me so much more to explore all the architecture we can't do in real life in the world. Thank you for that. And you've got a clap as well. So let me do a little clap. But that's true. Instead of just little old me asking the questions, if anyone's watched this live stream on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube, you can answer a question live to these two architectural professionals now who are doing stuff in the metaverse. Or you can also get in contact with them after. But sorry, so I interrupted there with the nice comments. But yes, there's different places, isn't it? So what have you been experimenting with, guys, at the moment? Is it mainly Decentraland then? Is that what you're saying? Or are you looking at other ones as well?
Decentraland and Spatial at the moment. And I think at the moment we tried with Sandbox, but the thing is Sandbox it's not for us. It's not for what we do. We tried.
That's interesting.
But it's
why is that? Is it? Do you think it looks quite comical, or like this? Because to me, it's kind of Minecraft-esque, right? And is that the way that you're not going right now? Perhaps.
No. It's so. Let's say every metaverse has their own aesthetic, and I don't think that our way of conceiving fits in that one.
Cool.
We tried with the textures and stuff. We couldn't make something that we would consider quality. So we rather give it for a 10 years old, and we don't mind not being in the sandbox, because
there you go. Leo's going to offend everyone in the sandbox. It sounds like Michel there, right?
I didn't mean it in that way.
I don't mind. We're just having a bit of fun here, but it's you got to experiment when you're doing all this stuff, right? And that's the point. And there's something for everyone. And you're right, like architects and designers as well. That is true. Maybe the aesthetics or the way of doing things suits you on different platforms. And also, I would imagine, I remember years ago reading about PlayStation 2, right? And PlayStation 2 had like the best graphics at the time compared to the other consoles. But I remember reading saying from a hardware perspective that it was so hard to make video games for PlayStation 2 compared to different mediums. So while the graphics were good, the developers were like, to make a game on the PlayStation 2 was rock solid because of the way Sony had their codes, and maybe you had Xbox at the time, which was easier. But I imagine as well, there's that other side to it. It's not just the aesthetic, isn't it, guys? It's also, I imagine that different platforms are maybe easier than each other, or maybe some of them aren't interoperable. I don't know if that's the word or I made it up, but what I mean is maybe it's really hard to make for the sandbox and not others. I mean, what's your experience? Do you find that? Do you find some platforms are easier than others to design for as an architect?
Yeah, as in definitely, because the point here is each metaverse has their own graphics, but most important is there is a file type that they accept for you to import your 3D to their own metaverse. So one thing that a lot of people that are architects and want to come to this new world that they need to bear in mind is that the softwares that we use on our industry as architects, some of them actually you can deploy right away, for example, on the Decentraland or even on Spatial.io. But you need to bear in mind that the quality, imagine if you only work with SketchUp and you finish the 3D and you deploy right away, I mean, you're not going to be excelling on anything because the materials are not that crisp, and the GLB file that we produce, which is in this case the format that you need to have to import to the Centraland and Spatial, I mean, it's not going to be a crisp result. You know, you need to add something else depending on which platform are you working with. So in this case, I mean, there's Blender, and then there's Unity, Unreal, and we'll give you an example. We've been working on the Centraland and Spatial, and as well on Mozilla Hubs, because they do have their own centralized metaverse. It's not decentralized, but that's another thing. And because, I mean, we do know Blender, we do know SketchUp, and right now we are starting to learn about Unreal because we've seen the latest Unreal 5 and
yeah, I've seen the demo. It's a bit crazy, isn't it? It's like next world,
It is crazy.
super high def realism.
Exactly. But I mean, there are, like, regarding your question, for example, there's a metaverse that we are very excited that is called Mona.gallery. The graphics are
I've
great.
heard about this. Yeah.
Yes. And you have actually really quality artists actually creating spaces. I don't even know if they are architects, to be fair, but I've seen spaces that even me with my background, I was like, oh, wow, okay, here we are talking about something, you know. But you do need some knowledge. I mean, and they explain very well on their websites. They have a tutorial, but you need some knowledge of Unity, how to import your 3D to Unity, and then run all the backgrounds checks and just make it transport to Mona. You know, there are tutorials, but there's not a lot of time. But this is something that actually has been a limitation for us. Otherwise, we already would have tested. I'm not going to say deploy the project there, but test it to see if we are happy with the result and if we go full steam ahead or not. You know.
Yeah, while we were talking about that, I was thinking about. It reminds me of years ago. I used to do 3D visualizations, and it's not as simple as just dumping a Revit model in, right, with a million polygons and seeing if it will plug into the metaverse. So we've got one more quick technical question before we move on. And Zen Modern Life again asks, what are you guys making the models in? Can you import a Revit model into these spaces? Now, I suspect you can't just dump a BIM model in, but Michel and Leo, you can confirm that, right? Is that true?
No. So you don't. Yeah. So you at the moment there are, as far as we know, there are no platforms that accept like RVT files, like from Revit or whatever. But you don't need. You don't need. It's just you don't need complicated stuff. You just it's a GLB file. You can do it in SketchUp, and as long as we use Blender just because the textures are more realistic. You can add PBR, okay? So you can add reflections and bumps a little bit, but otherwise you can just go with the SketchUp model. So you don't need to complicate stuff.
Yeah.
But this is how we do it.
Even because Revit, I mean, and another explanation here, I mean, I used to work with Revit. I'm not exactly very proficient, but in terms of molding the 3D idea, testing different options side by side, and the push and pull from SketchUp, I mean, I don't know any other 3D software where you can actually excavate and test so many options as efficiently as SketchUp. Revit has a potential, but it seems that it's too precise, too technical, and less artistic, and that's not exactly what the metaverse needs in terms of, that's not what's lacking on the metaverse have a lot of technical background, but more talking about coding and all the blockchain and all those crazy stuff, but I think as an architect, for us, what suits you well to start is SketchUp, just because of the free flow of ideas, and you're just creating, and then again, my recommendation, add Blender or Unity or Unreal to the game, join those together, because otherwise you will have a bland result if you only use SketchUp to import directly to the metaverse. But remember, different metaverses, different requirements. I mean, it's good to actually have a look before, do a lot of tests, because how many ideas I added that they don't work on the current metaverses because of polygons. There's so many. I have more ideas on the trash. Well, not on the trash, but on hold than actually the things that we released.
Interesting. Am I right in thinking that Blender is open source, or am I making that up?
Yeah.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
It is.
And that's a
Blender, Unity, and
big part.
Unreal.
There you go. So Unreal's open source. And really, I'm always a bit skeptical of Epic, though. You've got to read the small print, because I think like if it gets commercial, then Epic will want money. But I think, yeah, open source is quite important during this whole movement, isn't it? Are you finding that in the metaverse, architects like yourself are collaborating at the moment? What is it like in the scene? Is there a lot of open source, a lot of information sharing, or anything like that?
Michel?
Yeah, I mean, we are very active on Discord, Twitter, which are I would say the main, especially Discord, the main area. If you want to get to know the community is a big thing, of course. And if you want to get to know the community, you should definitely join one of the servers of the specific metaverse that you are trying to get into. And you will find really a lot of information, a lot of people there willing to help, to collaborate, to actually just tell you, oh, this is the tutorial, or I will even explain you if it's very simple. And has nothing to do with the physical world. It's a total different community, very much open mind, and not everyone, but I would say it's easy to find help.
Yeah, nice.
There's not a lot of competition, and there is, but in a healthy way.
Yeah. I think that's good. I agree. I've been on one or two Discord groups. It's quite funny because I used to use Discord to play online video games, and it's kind of become adopted into this. And also you've got Telegram, and you kind of go down these like roads, like rabbit holes of information. But they are equally rewarding. I don't know if Sunken Blimps are quite a good one that I like on Discord. But there's a chap called Matteo Stancati in America who does a lot of work on Spatial I/O. I think Spatial I/O is a great platform because anyone can use it, and I think that's important because I don't know how you feel, but like even my parents, I love my parents to death, but if anything's very technical, they just can't do it. And I think Spatial very clever because you can load up a phone or you can load up a computer, and it's very, very easy to go. But Spatial's an interesting one because it's a little bit more of an online communication or art platform-ish, whereas Decentraland, you can buy property and all of this stuff, and then you go to that next level of head explosion craziness where this plot of land with the architecture on there is worth $1 million and is bought by Nike or something to have a Nike shopping mall, right? So they're so different. But I know you've done some Spatial because I keep seeing the link below. Now I'm really happy to continue with the presentation because I love it. But maybe if it's cool, one of you guys can get in a Chrome tab, the Spatial, and we can zoom around on the screen. I don't know whether, if we think strategically now, perhaps one of you guys, you talk a little bit more about the presentation, and then one of the other one loads up Spatial ready. I don't know. Is that a cool plan?
Okay.
I'm the one asking. I'm sorry. I rocked up 2 minutes before this, so you guys haven't prepared. Sorry, listeners. It's very live on the Architecture Social Show.
Michel, you wanna load the Spatial arena?
I'm loading right now.
Okay.
Well, let's give some. While Michel does that, maybe Leo, you can tell me a bit about what trends you see in 2022. So you talked about you watched the video I done in 2021. Yes. That feels like a lifetime ago, doesn't it?
Yes,
what trends do you think are going to happen?
In this year probably we're going to see Unreal Engine 5 being the main, let's say, render engine.
Yeah.
And it scares me because I still cannot use it, so I still need to learn it.
Well, there you go. Well, I think that makes sense.
Yeah, because for example, I keep seeing videos on YouTube that shows the next metaverse, super realistic. And I think the trend is about realism now. Okay, so I think soon Unreal Engine will be the main thing to learn as architects.
That makes complete sense. But this isn't quite. I mean, this is cool. We can't pretend this is the epic engine, though, is it? But what we have to remember, this is a very different platform where people can go on their mobile, go on mum and dad's rubbishy computer, and it's got a. So Spatial, I think the ease of entry is very high, right? So do you want to walk us through, Michel, what this is? It seems like a cool kind of Dune Blade Runner-esque stadium or talking place, but what do you imagine this space being used for?
I mean, this is Decent Arena, and actually was the one that we talked before, like with the inverted pyramid.
Cool.
I mean, as the spawn point, it's actually right now on top because of an event that we had, but this was actually the same angle as the CGI that we produced. So like I was saying, it's about the structure that actually generates two different spaces. And as you walked in, you do have like all the exhibition area explaining OR, CR, NFT, was decent architecture. So we do have the exhibition space, and as well with the NFTs that were being auctioned on that event. So in terms of the reflection of the materials, like you're saying, Spatial actually works pretty well as an entry level. And I mean, bearing in mind that the metaverse is still on the entry level, you won't get a much better quality than this. And definitely, this is very accessible without needing Unreal or Unity. And here is actually the transition space where we have the entrance to the arena. And you do have the stage with some sculptures that this was kind of a work collaboration between us and NFT sculpture, where we actually designed the ring, and we talked about the stage being something that really enhances that experience. And she had the idea of having like some kind of like the astronomy comets running through on the centerpiece of our stage.
I love it. I think it makes sense. I'm looking forward to seeing some of these, because you could do talks online. I think this is the exact killer thing for the pandemic. What's interesting, us speaking though, frankly, though, I tend to find that the forum part of the Architecture Social, which was the most popular part during 2020, during the height of the pandemic, is now probably the least used part of the Architecture Social platform, if you were. So it would be very interesting to see how Spatial is used. And it's great that you're showing and it's selling NFTs, and I could see this working really well for architecture, end of year shows and stuff like that. Do you see any other uses for it as well then, guys?
I do. Stephen, for example, you're a YouTuber and you need a virtual building.
I thought about it. So I tell you, should we do a confession while we're here? Yeah. Should we do a confession? I paid for Spatial for a month, and where I got stuck, because we talked about what am I doing? You're like, Steve, are you doing the metaverse, all these projects? Now, because I haven't opened up last MicroStation or SketchUp or Revit since 2014. I got stuck to the first hurdle. So my Architecture Social stage was I need to sort out. So it was the sample. It was just the generic Spatial sample. So that's my confession. I've got the terrible desk, but I do think, and where I could see it working really well, is the forum of the Architecture Social having these kind of spaces like Spatial where people fill out. So it's definitely to be continued, and maybe we can also continue that conversation here and offline. But I've just been, again, guilty of, it's just me running. I think at least it's good that you two, there's two of you, because as well, like yourself, you talked about you work full time, in the physical world as well as the digital. But I do think it is team effort in this stuff, because you can't do everything on your own, right?
Absolutely, Stephen. If it wasn't for Michel, I would have never entered the metaverse. And I think
Really?
it's, I think
Likewise,
it's the
likewise.
same. No, really. Michel is a super hard worker. It's very difficult to find somebody that matches with you in terms of priorities and how hard it is to make, to do the work, and to
Yeah.
figure out stuff. Because at the beginning we didn't, nothing existed at the beginning. Like 6 months ago, we
Yeah.
needed to get it through on our own, and was very important to have Michel as a partner. And I'm very happy to have this adventure with him. So this is a love confession.
Well, there you go. It's a live confession. There you go. We'll do a round of applause for that. Do you know what? I've not actually had a chance to use all my cyberpunk sound effects, so we'll shove a few in there for extra, just to get them in the episode in some shape or form. I always like this point, because now you've kind of given us an insight, and I appreciate that, because I know it's talking's one thing, and then you got a presentation. I think especially though with the metaverse, it's so visual. And yes, I'll put this on Spotify and people can listen and then have a look at the link. But I really think it helps to see the projects, especially when it's moving so fast. We're at this kind of nice point now of the winding down area, and just before we spoke about doing this live, you asked me a few questions as well about the Architecture Social and me and the metaverse as well. And I think that interviews, they can be one-sided sometimes, and I really appreciate you answering all my questions. I thought maybe we could open up the conversation if you have any questions for me or my thoughts as well.
I do. Yeah.
Go on then, Leo. Go in for the kill.
So you're a recruiter, and I was wondering, is there anything happening in terms of recruiting metaverse architects in existing architecture firms at the moment?
Good question. Short answer is no, not immediately. That's the truth. But I can see it going that way. I think it's a bit like what we talked about before with Revit and certain requirements. I think there's probably going to be where I see this role manifesting already. So, for instance, R&D, there's doing a lot of virtual reality and augmented reality, and I imagine that they're looking into it. And I know, for instance, Fosters and Partners again have their own research component, but I think you'll have like the bigger companies like those where like Heatherwick, where they can invest in research. But I imagine a lot of this stuff is like grassroots, and I think it's quite an entrepreneurial space as well. So there's a lot of businesses like yourself which is emerging from this, and it could go either way, isn't it? It could be that you continue working in architecture and you do some projects outside of hours, or it could be that it becomes into a full-blown studio, and we're at that such a really exciting point where I think the important bit is that you have to be in it. But from recruitment, the other bit you mentioned, so LinkedIn do this like creators talk and where they're trying to curate people, and one of the ideas that I wanted to do going forward, and I pitched to LinkedIn. So we'll see if they come back or not. I'll do it anyways, but it would be great if we could do it with LinkedIn. Is talking about architecture, a career in the metaverse, and a bit like what we talked about of the technical limitations or how to overcome that, or as well as the technical aspects. Then you've got the design aspect, isn't it? So it's like this whole different challenge, which you guys actually quite unpack quite well of existing technology, existing hardware, existing programs, and then also the design, And so so to summarize, I've not seen it trickle down in terms of roles, but can I see it coming? Yes. Will it be a brief that comes to a recruiter? Probably not. But put it this way, it's taken me 8 to 10 years to now get parametric or computational design roles for recruitment. Whereas I went in 2014, I used to love that stuff, and I would have loved to have worked on it, but that was ahead of its time from a recruitment point of view. Those roles were very rare, and now they're more commonplace. So I think it'll take a bit of time, but it will get there. Does that answer the question, Leo, in a roundabout way?
Yes. Yeah, it does. I think it does. I don't know if you like I had like a thought like a couple of days ago about
Mm,
Zaha Hadid in the metaverse,
mm,
and I would like to share and see what do you think also about this. So I think what is
mm-hmm.
impressive about Zaha Hadid architecture and Foster, but more Zaha Hadid, is that those ideas they exist in the real world. Okay, so
Mm,
that is what is impressive. Is the technical is the tender package. That's impressive about their work, I think.
mm.
And so when you see the translation of that, for example, Bjarke Ingels in the metaverse in the Central End, you see that, and it is not as impressive as their work in real time, in my opinion,
Oh,
because
that's
it's
interesting.
way easier to do those shapes in the virtual world than you do it in the physical world. So this is why I wanted to share with you this and see what you think, because
Yeah.
it's not as impressive to do crazy shapes in the metaverse, I think.
Eh, Interesting.
Yeah.
You're
Open
probably more
conversation.
informed on me on that point from an architectural perspective. Where I think it's quite good though is so everyone has an opinion on Zaha Hadid. Love
Yeah.
it, not for you. Everyone has an opinion, right? But I
Okay.
think
Yeah.
it's quite important that I'm quite happy that these big companies are coming into this space, because what I think it does is that it's it grounds it into realistic conversations. Whereas I think sometimes before people can write it off as video games or not realistic. And I think that when you've got BIG and Zaha Hadid and Patrick Schumacher's doing a lot of
Yes.
conversations, Patrick, I'm gonna invite you in at some point. But I think yeah. Don't worry, Leo. I won't say what you said just then. But
Get me
but
in, get me in. I will be super happy to talk to.
I know you were just, but it's a good point you have. I think though, bigger companies and smaller companies, I think it's important in the space, because I think the what's good is making. What I don't like the idea is people writing it off. You know, like years ago, I used to play video games and people would be like, "Oh my gosh, that's for losers" or whatever kind of thing, right? Whereas, and now it's like suddenly video games is like the highest earning entertainment platform. So everyone has said that. It's kind of naive, because
Yeah.
Rockstar's making a lot of money. People are making a lot of money. There's a reason why Autodesk is buying video game engines. They're not doing it for a punt. They've seriously saw the economic benefits into it. And I think that the metaverse has a place. And I think that companies which kind of go, oh, this is for children or whatever, that maybe is that's not a maybe, that definitely is misinformed opinion. So I think it's important they're in there. But again, I have an opinion on what's cool in architecture, but I haven't practiced as an architect for years. So I'm kind of in the space. But that's why I like that they're here as well, if that makes sense.
No, for sure, Stephen. I did it. Yeah, I agree with you. But for example, if you go in London and see the Olympic stadium that Zaha Hadid
Yeah.
did, why is impressive? Because it's real. Those
Yeah.
curves exist, and that's impressive. The work that is behind designing all of the single beams and columns, that's impressive. Is the technical team of Zaha Hadid that is absolutely mind blowing.
Yeah.
And you take it in the metaverse, you don't need that. And this is I finish up here. Sorry,
No, I
I'm
like it.
repeating myself.
Well, they can push it to the next level, and that's what you're saying. Well, maybe Leo, we'll get you in here as a metaverse critique at some point, and then
Okay, cool.
you can inform me on what's pushing the barrier. Michel, you look like you wanted to add something there. Is that right, or are you relaxed?
No. I agree. I mean, it's not about just it's different beauties. In real life, when we look at the
Mm,
building, I mean, there's the statical beauty that we can actually see, but there's this component that Leo is saying, especially when we're talking about parametrical architecture. But suddenly you go to the metaverse, and it doesn't necessarily mean it will work, and especially because you are full of people trying to do that. I'm
mm,
not saying they're not doing it right. They are adding their own way on that design line. And
yeah,
second is because the current metaverse doesn't even allow you to do so much about that, because files become very heavy with all those parametric architecture, of course, all the curves. and you need to simplify, and suddenly if you do like that, you just lose all the touch and all that perfect shape that you spend so many hours creating, you know. But there's different beauties that you need to pursue on the virtual world and the physical world. And I mean, that's a bit of opinion. And
Yeah,
luckily, me and Leo on this, we don't have too much. We have debates, but we tend to agree on this.
yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
Well, and the space is moving, isn't it? And I think
Mhm.
that that's the exciting bit. I mean, I was speaking to Fatima, who you both know about this as well, and I'm looking at NFTs and the metaverse for the architecture social. The truth is, like we talked about, I get pulled into all the other aspects of the business, and there's only so much I can do with it on the weekend before my partner tells me I need to, come on, get off the computer kind of thing. But I was looking at one point on how to distribute profits evenly using, because not just Ethereum, because I was looking at, I forget the other currency, which is quite
Smart
popular.
contracts in general.
Yeah, I was
Smart
looking at what
contracts
it's.
in general, yeah.
Yeah, I was looking at some other smart contracts, and I was looking at how do you divide the profits automatically between wallets.
Yeah.
And I remember looking in January, February, and there was one which was half baked getting there, and I was like, I can't really proceed any further with the project. And I looked like 3 weeks ago, and that problem has been solved. And that's
where?
how that's
in
how
OpenSea?
fast the space is moving. Yeah, I think it was like there was, I forget the exact words. I'll have a look and
Okay.
I'll put the link in the bio. But basically, the point I'm getting at is that in 3 months, a problem that I had was there is now gone.
Yeah,
And I think that the space is moving so fast.
Yeah.
But that to me also is the exciting part of it. And I think some people go, metaverse. People have been talking about it for a year or two, but I think architecture in the metaverse is just beginning, and we're at a very, very early position still, where there are not many rules, and it's quite exciting for that. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're right. It moves very fast. This is why I'm scared about the Unreal Engine, because I have to learn it in the next month or two.
Yeah, that's one of the top tips here is get on Unreal. But I think this has been amazing. We're at kind of like the hour mark now, and I think this is a really nice time, especially people on their lunch break. Perhaps you can tell everyone, Michel and Leo, where to find you and where to find decent architecture if they want to learn more about what you're up to and to get in contact. What's the best way?
I mean, any of our social media would say, I mean, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, if you type in decent architecture, thank God we are the only ones for now. Nobody blocked that name. So Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Discord, if you go searching around, I mean, we are normally, we are always looking
YouTube
at our message. YouTube as well, yes. We do have a few videos there. True. Leo is managing a bit more the YouTube, but true that we can be contact there. And we are more than willing to help and sharing a bit of our knowledge. And I mean, the point where we are right now, it was all due to having two main reasons. First is the community that is warm and ready to help. You will always find someone that will give you tips, a tutorial, at least a link to a tutorial that will explain more things. And the second point is, in our case, me and Leo, we really like all the ecosystem that surrounds the Web3, the blockchains, the NFTs, the metaverse. You don't think that for you to get into this, you need to be like a big fan of all this movement behind. But if you do like it, it makes it so easier, because in a way, a lot of the metaverses we are working is associated with the movement, and the people that we are actually working, making collaborations, they are on this. So it's just a big web full of knowledgeable people ready to be shared. So if people want to move in and want to have some words with us, feel free to contact us.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Well, I think that kind of is a perfect point to end on. So thank you so much, Michel. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank
And
you, Stephen.
Leo,
Okay.
we can hear you. Occasionally you're frozen, but that's okay. Well, I don't mind. You're here. Thank you so much, Leo, as well. And everyone that's kind of joined us, especially during the lunch, especially when it's so hot. That's why I've been like gasping away on this water, which has gone all the way down. But I appreciate you being here. Get in touch with the decent chaps. You've got Leo, Michel. Drop them a message. I'm going to end the live stream here. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you,
guys.
Stephen.
Stay on the stage, and we will catch up soon. Oh yeah, and thank you, Zen, in the audience as well. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.
Take care.
Ciao, Stephen. Thank you.